here we go.
Welcome to the Nine Route Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Nine Route Fantasy Football Podcast. Pat and Scott, twilight of week 7, going into week 8, right? It's going fast. Gosh, November's around the corner. Halloween's throwing up all over everybody's yards right now. And you know, the onset of the fall is here in full force. And with that, obviously, fantasy football is in high gear. That's what we're doing. We're trying to talk about who to pick up and who got hurt and who we like on a week-to-week basis with our starts and sits. And it's been a bumpy ride. I'll be honest. I have been pretty bad on most of my takes, except for a couple guys. But, you know, my teams show that. And some of it is not my fault, and some of it is totally my fault. At the same time, I will stick to my guns and just, you know, die on whatever hill I started on there. But I just hanging tough. Pat, how you making out so far? We're kind of nearing the halfway point so far in the NFL season, let alone for a lot of us, we are at that halfway point of fantasy football. How you making out so far?
Good. I'm struggling in a few leagues and doing well in a couple others, so I think that's to be expected, I guess. I'm not the type of person who, while I do trust my calls and my gut, my instinct, and my numbers, I also like to diversify a little bit when it comes to, you know, who I have on my different fantasy teams, because, you know, you don't want a couple of injuries to some of your key players to derail your entire season. I've actually, you know, kind of had that happen because I was so high on Trey Lance this year and drafted him in a lot of places. And that injury kind of hurt me in quite a few leagues. But in the leagues that I didn't have him, or the leagues that I was able to pick up some capable replacements, I'm still doing pretty well. I think the league that I'm doing the worst in, strangely enough, is the one I want to do the best in, which is our league of record. I think we're
right
both,
there with you, buddy.
I think we're like 11th and 12th. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're gonna
you get the pink shirt for this year.
I think after this week, I'll be ahead of you if I can hold on to this disgusting narrow victory that I'm clinging on to right now. But it's some have been pretty ugly. I think I am undefeated in one of my leagues and winless in one. So, and then everything else is sort of somewhere in between. I'm doing okay. It's you know, halfway through roughly the regular season is where we're at now. I guess now at the end of week 7. So you know, you kind of have an idea of where your team is, you know, maybe where you want it to be and how to get it to that spot. And that's what we're going to kind of help you out with today. Normally we do our injuries and then our waiver wire updates, but this week we're going to do injuries, and then we're going to hit you with some players that you can look for to pick up. And hopefully, you know, if you're in the midst of a playoff run, some guys that could help you get there, and some guys that maybe are clogging up your bench that you could, you know, get rid of or trade away to maybe pick up some of these players. So hopefully, you know, if you're looking to get, like I said, get into the playoffs and do well in the playoffs, we did a little bit of research today to help you kind of just give you an idea of a couple players that you maybe should be looking at for the long haul. So we're going to get into that. Before we start and give you our where you can find us, we have a website. We're at www.the9routeffb.com. You can also reach us at that email address, the9routeffb@gmail.com. We're also both on Twitter. I am at the 9route1. Scott is at Scott from Delco. So you can follow us on Twitter. We answer pretty much every Twitter question that we get. So if you have any questions or, you know, start-sit questions, or, you know, should I trade this guy or whatever, shoot it to us, and we will definitely get back to you with a, you know, I try to always get back to people with an answer and an explanation of why I feel the way that I feel. I feel like it's very easy to just say, you know, oh, pick up this player and drop this player. But if you don't give somebody your thought process behind it, I mean, what's really the point? You know what I mean? If you don't, I'm one of those people who I need to know why I'm doing what I'm doing for it to make sense. And if I agree with, you know, that train of thought, then, I'll make that move. If I feel like, hey, maybe this person who's given me advice is overlooking this key part of whatever advice they're giving me, maybe I will go in an opposite direction. But so we always try to give you like I said, a take and a reason why we feel the way that we feel. So like I said, look us up and hit us up on socials if you have any questions. All right, man, we got a lot of news to get to today, and I think this trade stuff is probably going to take a little bit more time than we're used to. So let's.
There was a trade? I didn't know.
Must have been a nobody.
I've actually never heard the name really mentioned, but a guy played for the Panthers, so
that's why I never heard of him, because they're terrible.
Yeah.
But so let's jump right into that.
Time for the news.
So obviously the big news this past week was the Christian McCaffrey trade. He was traded from the Carolina Panthers to the San Francisco 49ers. In return, the Panthers got a second, third, and fourth round pick in 2023 and a fifth round pick in 2024. Panthers said they were looking for a first rounder for McCaffrey if they were going to trade him. San Francisco did not have a first rounder because of the Trey Lance deal that they traded their first round pick in 2023 away already. So they were like, well, how about we give you, I think they pulled a Rudy deal here. We'll give you the second, third, fourth, and fifth instead of a first. And Carolina, I guess decided that the value was worth it and made the trade. So I know normally we kind of run through these a little bit, but I think for a second we need to talk about what this means for McCaffrey, maybe what it means for, the Panthers running backs as well. So what do you think, Scotty? Do you feel like this is a good thing for McCaffrey? You think he's in a better situation, or do you think he was better off being kind of the man in Carolina?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, in a sense, when you kind of pull back a little bit, obviously he signs a big contract. He has a monster season, and then it's been injuries and stuff like that have really kind of derailed him a little bit. And to see him come back to be kind of like himself a little bit, it is definitely there. And I'm sure that the usage was dialed back, and Carolina just a bad team this year. Coach is gone, or they're flipping over, and they made this deal to go to San Francisco, to go back out to, again, he played college football at Stanford. His father and his coach's father know each other. Like, there's a lot going on there that I think probably is going to make him feel very comfortable. And to be able to walk into a team like the San Francisco 49ers that are, they're one of the better ones in the NFL. They took it on the nose yesterday in a sense with the Chiefs, and they've had a tough schedule, and they've had their own injuries, but a lot of people still had them picked to be one of the top teams in the conference, even though, that division's a mess. 4-3 Seahawks, 3-3 Rams, 3-4, and San Francisco's tied with the Cardinals right now. Defensively, they were banged up. Their offensive line is way better. The quarterback is still a question mark, and they have things going on there. I think it's going to take a minute to get him incorporated properly into the offense. He did a little bit of work yesterday, and he's so multifaceted out of the backfield as a receiver as well, that it's going to make them a better football team. I do think it's a great fit. And I think, again, this season's probably going to be a little bit of an asterisk because of, again, it's midseason. It's not the real quarterback that they want in Trey Lance. He's already out with an injury. He's done for the season. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, yes, San Francisco not having now a first rounder, second rounder, third rounder, fourth rounder, at least on paper, is something that is going to have an effect definitely for down the road. I feel like that's, they're kind of pushing all in for this season. As far as if they can get to that hump, who knows? Who really knows? Like the way the NFL season has been going. So, again, just taking a look, the Niners, for what they have left, they have 2 third-round comp picks in 23, a fifth, a seventh, and a seventh from Denver. And that's possibly, maybe 1 or 2 others shake out there or something, with free agency. So, they're all in. And McCaffrey, I think, he's obviously got a little length in that deal. But from a fantasy perspective, I think with the way they use their running backs, we know that you can get some usage out of those guys. Some of them have been, week winners. Some of them have been top 25 guys, Elijah Mitchell, Trey Sermon, they already moved off of him. maybe they get a little more consistent with the running game because of a back like this, or his usage goes up. It still remains to be seen. But I mean, for him to not finish still as a top 10 running back, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, I think San Francisco believes that their window is, this year, possibly next year, which some of your early round draft picks will play and contribute. But, a lot of times these third, fourth, fifth round guys, they don't get in right away, and they don't, make a major contribution right away. And that, that's not always the case, but that's generally the case. So I think San Francisco feels like, with the offense being now a little bit more dynamic with McCaffrey, with their defense being, one of the best defenses in the league still, as long as, Nick Bosa can get and stay healthy, I think the 49ers defense is definitely top 3 in the entire league. I feel like Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the 49ers general manager, feel like this is our opportunity to win a Super Bowl. Let's go out and do it. And if we have to mortgage the future to do that, then so be it. And I mean, from fantasy football, that's not necessarily a bad approach. You know what I mean? If you have an opportunity to win a championship. Now, I said the Niners are under 500, but in a winnable division. And it's pretty much, the NFL has always been make it to the dance and just hope you're playing good football at that time. And I think San Francisco still believes they have a likely chance to make the playoffs. And once they get in the playoffs, like they did last year, they surprised, a couple teams. They surprised the Packers in Green Bay. So I think they absolutely have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl title this year. I mean, it's not out of the question completely. And then they're going to have Trey Lance coming back next year. I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but if, for whatever reason, Lance ends up being, the quarterback that they think he is, they may have a chance to go back to back, again, assuming health and all that stuff. I mean, they definitely have the talent on both sides of the ball to do it. So I think it was a good move for them. Real quick, we'll talk about the impact it has on the Carolina Panthers run game. As we saw this past week, looks like Deontay Foreman, who, I'm glad that he's getting an opportunity to, finally be a lead back. I mean, I don't know for how long, and it's definitely not for a good team, but he's a guy who was super talented and unfortunately had that Achilles injury that derailed his career, but he got back to it. Finished Sunday's game against the Bucs with 15 carries for 118 yards and added 2 receptions on 2 targets for another 27 yards. Yeah. Had an outstanding game. Chuba Hubbard came in and got the rushing touchdown. But Foreman looked really good, averaged almost 8 yards per carry in that game against a really good Bucs defense. Now the Bucs, look like total crap in that game, offensively and defensively, but it's good to see Foreman getting some work. And I think that, moving forward, both Foreman and Hubbard could potentially be guys that you can start in your flex moving forward. It depends. I want to see how Carolina plays moving forward. One good game can sometimes be, sort of an aberration, but, you string together a couple of decent games or at least a couple of good offensive performances for what we do here in fantasy football. And I think that, those guys could potentially be, startable assets on your fantasy team.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. I think that, Foreman was brought in to be a stronger backup to McCaffrey in the event of an injury and things of that nature. And yeah, to see him, he looked great on my bench yesterday. Obviously, wasn't in a hurry to start him against Tampa Bay, one of the best Ds against the run on fantasy football and in real life. And obviously that game just totally went opposite of everything. I'm sure, different people that had them in parlays and stuff like that, if you're a bet and just enjoyed it. But yeah, to see, I think he'll probably be that guy given that opportunity. I mean, he had a nice season last year, with the Tennessee Titans obviously coming in when Derrick Henry went down and looked to be, like you said, the running back of old, where he showed a lot of promise with the Houston Texans and, with a bad injury. And it took a long time for him to get back, and to see him now maybe get a chance to flourish a little bit for a team that is in a spot where, yeah, maybe they're just going to sit there and kind of just bounce these guys around and see what happens. They're not worried about winning at all, but if they're just going to dedicate themselves to the run, allow, PJ Walker to stand back. They already said he's going to remain the starter regardless of who gets back from injury, and just kind of ride that team and just see what they have, to evaluate. I think at this point, that's what they have to do. Maybe using a top 3-4 pick on a quarterback, which is probably the most likely concept for them, depending on where it shakes out and who's there with them. Yeah, then maybe they don't have to hurry out and get a running back for the sake of a season or two. Maybe these guys as a tandem can play well together and they can build off of that. But it was nice to see. And again, moving forward, yeah, he definitely looks to be startable. Like you said, flex solid, maybe an RB2, especially with the bye weeks.
Another injury, or I guess our first injury that we're going to talk about, Matt Ryan. He was injured at the end of that game. Appears that he was okay and could play, but apparently is not going to anymore. It looks like I saw a report today that head coach Frank Reich is going to bench Matt Ryan in favor of Sam Ehlinger. Not really sure what the thought process is there. I know that the Colts are not having a great season so far this year, but I mean, they're 500. They're basically a half a game out in the division. And I mean, Matt Ryan's not playing great, but Carson Wentz was there last year. They had him for a season. He almost got them to the playoffs if it wasn't for that terrible game against the Jags in Week 18. And then they just shoo him off to the side and no, you're not good enough. You go away. Now Matt Ryan, a very accomplished quarterback in the NFL, gets 7 games before they bench him. Like I don't understand. I don't understand the rationale behind benching a quarterback who's a half game out in the division when obviously quarterback is not your only issue. Like I don't know, man. It's baffling to me. I don't think it's the right move, and I mean, I guess we're gonna see where we go from here. But I just don't know. Why would you trade for a guy and then give him 7 games where he doesn't even have a losing record? Like I don't know what's going on in Indianapolis. I don't know if there's some pressure being put on, if Frank Reich is just, feels like he needs to win games now or he's going to lose his job. I'm not really sure what it is, but it is for me personally, I think it's a terrible, terrible decision. I don't know how you feel about it. We didn't get a chance to talk about this before we got on, but just mind blown right now for me.
Yeah, no, and again, I know we try to stay on one side of this, but I do feel like jumping in too. Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts suck. I'm sorry, there is nothing wrong. Franchise-wise, it's the owner who likes to show his ring that Peyton Manning got him and all his cool pictures, wants to sit there and act like he helps to run the league, and you have no clue what you're doing. You're running your team into the ground. You've never taken care of a quarterback. You ruined Andrew Luck's career. Yeah, you got Carson Wentz. You didn't like the guy, so you got rid of him. And thanks for that draft pick, by the way, as an Eagles fan. Big appreciate on that. Bum. And then, yeah, you bring in Matt Ryan, so you make another, you make another move to bring in a veteran quarterback. And yes, you give the guy exactly that. You give the guy 7 games. Your team's 3-3-1. You still have a shot at the playoffs. You have a shot at your own division, all that stuff. It's insanity. It really is. I mean, right now, the way it sits, you're already kind of middle of the pack. You'd really have to lose a lot to tank to get yourself back in maybe the top 10 to get a draft pick. What are you going to do? You're going to try to draft a quarterback, or are you going to make another deal? Like they're just one of the most rudderless organizations in football, and it's year after year. And yeah, last year, yeah, the bad game was the fact that you had a running back who, when he averaged 20 carries a game, had over 100 yards, and you won almost every time, and you didn't give him up 20 carries in a game that meant the playoffs. I think Frank Reich is a little bit overmatched, but again, yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure coming from upstairs from that bum of an owner that they have down there that thinks he's that guy. And I'm sorry, but again, you ruined Andrew Luck's entire career. You could have had, God'd still be playing for you. God knows you might have even had a shot at another Super Bowl. But, that's one thing aside. And then to watch this happen. Now you're going to bring Sam Ehlinger in there to see what he's got. And maybe the kid comes in and plays really well because he's a fresh arm. I get it. You've had a couple guys that are long in the tooth. But it's the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever seen. I agree 100%. And again, they want to get Daniel Snyder out of Washington for a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. I get that. Yeah, maybe you should get rid of like a bad owner like this that just doesn't care. He's just going to keep showing it. Hey, look at my 1 ring. Yeah, arguably the greatest quarterback in football. I know Tom Brady's got them all. But when you say overall quarterback, he's right up there with him. Peyton Manning gets you that ring. Oh, and by the way, the next year you went back. You could have had back-to-back. You didn't put a good team together. You suck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that you made the Daniel Snyder comment too, because I I saw that at the fall, whatever it is, the owners conference or whatever. Jim Irsay was the one sort of pushing to hey, maybe we need to get Daniel Snyder removed from the league. So yeah, I agree. I don't think he's a very good owner. I think there are definitely guys, him, Jerry Jones, Al Davis when he was still alive, guys who just listen, man. Your job is just to make money. Like I understand that you feel like because it's your team, you have some sort of say, and you do. But good leaders delegate to people who know what they're doing and let them go to work. These owners who overstep their place, I don't want to say place because it is their place, it's their team. But if you have a general manager, right, exactly.
Yeah,
if you have a general manager and a head coach, let them do their job. Like, just let them do whatever it is that they're going to do. And I'm not saying I don't know that this call was made, by Jim Irsay. I don't know. This might be Frank Reich's call. It may be something that they came up with together. I don't know. But it's just, I do understand what you're saying with the whole, Jim Irsay thing. Like, he definitely is one of those guys that, how many, I don't know all the owners in the league, and I'm a really, really big football fan, and I couldn't pick, every single owner out, in a lineup if you showed me their face. Jim Irsay, I could. Jerry Jones, I could, because these guys they have to make it about them when it should be about the team. And, that's one of the things that, they want players to not do. They don't want it to make it about them. It should be about the team. These owners need to take some of their own advice there and back off and let their head coach and let their general managers do what it is that they are paying them to do.
Well, and yeah, the GM Chris Ballard that's been there since 2017, like they've done nothing. I mean, they've had 2 seasons where they've been 10 wins, 11 wins. They were 9-8 in 2021, and again, that they blew a shot at the playoffs. They stink, and yes, it's because of that. Like, as Eagles fans, we don't mind Jerry getting involved and stuff like that. We'd like to see that. We always joke that it helps, but were his stats this season amazing? No, not by any stretch. But he's got 9 touchdowns, 9 picks. He's throwing 3% of his passes are picks. I get it. Maybe it's the talent around him. Maybe it's the fact that his pocket collapses and he has trouble getting the reads out. It's his first year with a playbook. He's got the 4th most yards in the league right now. So obviously the guy's passing, and obviously, yes, he's not your Matty Ice, and he's on a new team. Like, yeah, you got to give the guy more than 7 games. And if he helps you tank to get a new quarterback, great. It is what it is. But yeah, they did him dirty. I mean, now he's going to be 3rd string. Like, come on, that's ridiculous, man.
We'll move past this. We don't want to we've spent too much time on this already.
Oh, yeah, we could do a whole show on this.
Yeah, we probably could. And I think that's probably a bad idea. So let's move on. Another quarterback injury. Ryan Tannehill came out basically just for a play in that game. Ended up going back into the game. Is technically listed as questionable for next week now, but I think he'll be fine. No big deal there. Really bad news here. The Jets lost Breece Hall, their star rookie running back. Torn ACL out for the season. I mean, it's just a shame because Breece Hall was absolutely killing it, and I think had a pretty good shot at rookie of the year. I mean, definitely offensive rookie of the year. So really just having a great season, and it sucks that he's gone for the season. Jets also lost Elijah Vera Tucker, their 1st round pick from, was it last year? He was a 1st round pick. He's also going to be out for the season, and Corey Davis has a sprained MCL, which may cause him to miss a week or 2. Usually the MCL sprains aren't too bad. You just need to rest those.
Another guy that, very scary injury for a lot of fans and obviously owners. DK Metcalf, looked like it could have been something very serious with the knee, the leg, the way everything looked there was pretty grim. But right now, according to Ian Rappaport, possible patella tendon strain. So no structural damage, all the good news that you would hope for. Obviously, they're, going to make sure everything's good with tests. 2 to 5 week window seems to be it right now. And obviously they may not be in a big hurry to rush him back. Right now they're sitting in a reasonable spot. They're actually leading their division by a game. Marquise Goodwin on the waiver wire is probably pretty available. He had 2 touchdowns in week 7 and has been, one of those players in the past that can be a little streaky, can help you out. Missed all of 2020 with COVID as a member of the Eagles, and then went out and has just been kind of journeying around with the Bears. But he might be a pickup for you. going into week 8, just a bench stash at this point. But if he's going to miss time, DK Metcalf, definitely something to watch, and that may have an effect on Tyler Lockett as well.
Another possible 2 to 5 week injury. David Njoku went out with a high ankle sprain in the game against the Ravens on Sunday. Still waiting on further tests to see how long it's going to be before Njoku can get back out there. Unfortunately, with these high ankle sprains, like we talked about before, they do tend to linger a little bit. And Njoku is one of those really athletic tight ends. That's basically, why he got paid what he did, and why he's been producing the way he has is because he's definitely, a better athlete than most of the guys that he's playing against, especially you put a linebacker on them, they're not fast enough. You put a cornerback or a safety on them, they're not big enough. So, big loss for the Cleveland Browns. They have Jacoby Brissett has been relying on him a lot so far this year. So hopefully he comes back sooner than later. I believe the Browns are on bye week 9. So again, if it's a short injury, he could possibly be back week 10. But definitely somebody to keep an eye on because he's been a top 10 tight end so far this year in fantasy.
Yes, another injury on a team that is having a lot of trouble with injuries right now is the Los Angeles Chargers. Mike Williams, high ankle sprain. There it is again. This doesn't maybe look good right now for their situation. They're a game out in the AFC West. You see that Mike Williams may be missing some time. They don't have anything yet. They'll probably come out in a day or two by Wednesday for sure. Keenan Allen was only able to play about a half. Josh Palmer was out. Jalen Guyton's already on IR. So it's like DeAndre Carter that had a nice week 1. And I mean, right now, to me, it seems like there's a pretty good shot that if anybody wants to do one of those midseason trades to try to pick up a wide receiver, a Brandon Cooks' name was floated out there. Elijah Moore unhappy in New York with the Jets. But again, he may come into play now with the Corey Davis injury. Odell Beckham still out there as a free agent. I mean, there's a lot of things in play. Not saying that that's even been whispered at yet. We'll see what happens. Having Austin Eckler in that team does give you a little bit of a pass-catching dynamic, but that just probably puts more of the focus on him as the guy to stop if all these other wide receivers are out. So definitely not looking good. We'll see what kind of news shakes out this week with the Chargers. Maybe some people get a little healthier than we thought. But if Mike Williams is going to miss some time, that really does put a dent in a team that's just been banged up. Justin Herbert from week 1 and so on and so forth. So it remains to be seen. But Mike Williams currently out with a high ankle sprain. Yeah,
they luckily have a bye this week. So hopefully that'll give them a chance to heal up a little bit and get some of these guys back out there full speed. Daniel Bellinger went out of the Giants game this week, got poked in the eye and actually ended up with a fractured orbital socket. Anybody who's ever had that, I've never had one, but I had a friend who did have one when I was younger, and that is not a fun-looking injury to have. Definitely not going to be able to catch any balls for the foreseeable future. They're hoping that he will return this season, but there's no guarantee on that. I can guarantee that the guy will probably have a visor on his helmet moving forward for the rest of his career after that. But unfortunate too, because he was really we talked about him last week. He was one of the guys who, I said was starting to become a bigger part of that offense. And, he had another fairly decent game before he got injured yesterday. Just unfortunate that injuries have to happen, but that's just the way football goes. It's a brutal sport.
Yeah, no, definitely not good to see. Another injury to a prominent wide receiver that was just getting back after being a little banged up and after a bye week, Amon-Ra St. Brown. At first, everybody automatically had him pegged for a concussion. Supposedly did not suffer a true concussion, but based on the new protocols, with some extremity issues and the head being foggy, they didn't hesitate to keep him out of the Dallas game. And it looks like he's still a go. He's been cleared under the new protocols, and they have him ready to start week 8 against the Dolphins. So it sounds like you're okay if you're an Amon-Ra St. Brown owner. I know a lot of people held their breath, but that is one bit of good news when it comes to the injuries that we've talked about this week. And then there's one more to speak of. Mike Boone, who had been a little bit of a stash, where a lot of people were hoping for the best for him with the Denver Broncos with that crazy backfield that they have. he ended up with an ankle injury, automatically put on IR, so it's not looking good for him. I would say he's probably droppable or maybe worth a slot, but with that backfield being the way it is, for a lot of people, Latavius Murray had already been a pickup. He may still be available if you're looking to pad those stats and make sure you have a handcuff, let alone with the way the usage goes there. Marlon Mack was signed off of the 49ers practice squad as a veteran fill-in. That guy has been on like every team in the league this year, I think, Marlon Mack. But he is now a member of the Denver Broncos. So I think it's still the Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray split. Probably try to work Marlon Mack a little bit into the offense, maybe just to help spell these guys so that there's no more injuries. But Mike Boone on IR, probably droppable in your league.
Yeah, with that Amon-Ra St. Brown thing, that's what we were talking about. Was it last week or the week before with the ataxia thing, where that's basically any fogginess or dizziness or anything like that, basically anything that looks like it could be a concussion, they're being extra careful with now. And like I said, I did mention that this is going to be a thing now in fantasy football, at least for the rest of this season, maybe moving forward. So this is it's an unfortunate thing. It's going to cost, without doubt, it's going to cost people a chance to win their fantasy leagues, guys, and getting hurt right in the playoffs. It's going to suck for a lot of people. That's unfortunately just where it is. Like I said, player health and safety is more important than fantasy football stats for sure. So, but it doesn't mean that it isn't frustrating for us fantasy football players. All right, well that's the news and the injuries for Week 7. Like I said, we're going to get into a few trade targets moving forward. Some guys that you can trade for, maybe some guys that you could potentially trade away. And what we're going to do, how we're going to do this is I'm going to give you sort of a redraft look, more of a season-long, guys that I would like to trade for or am actively trading for or think I should trade for or think you should trade for, and then some guys that you probably should be trading away at this point. And then Scott's going to give you some longer terms, dynasty, keeper league, stuff like that. So if you're in any of those leagues, that's more of Scott's area of expertise, is the long game. So he's going to give you some guys that you could be looking to pick up for your dynasty teams or your keeper teams and stuff like that. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and kick this off. At the quarterback position, there's a few guys that I am interested in potentially trading for. One of them is Tom Brady. He's really down right now as far as fantasy points. The Bucs are not playing very well, but Brady's third in the league in pass attempts with 297. And I mean, he's Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest of all times. I'm sure he's going to figure it out. Not going to finish probably in the top 5 like we had him in our, some people had him in their preseason rankings, but I don't think he's necessarily the quarterback 14 or wherever it is that he's ranked right now. I think his numbers are going to continue to come up for the rest of the season. But the guy I'm really looking to target for a playoff run is, if you can get your hands on him, is Justin Herbert. Through 7 weeks so far, Herbert's the QB 8 in total fantasy points and points per game, but he's the QB number 1 in attempts. He's got 308 passing attempts and number 1 in attempts per game at 44 among quarterbacks with at least 4 starts. The Chargers are also third in offensive plays per game. They run just under 70 plays per game. But between his own rib injury and the injuries to Keenan Allen, who missed 5 games so far this season, and now Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Herbert hasn't had his full complement of weapons since week 1, basically. Assuming the Mike Williams injury isn't too severe, and assuming that Keenan Allen can stay healthy for the rest of the season, which I know those are pretty big ifs. With the Chargers' pace of play and the amount of times that they throw the ball, Herbert will almost definitely improve upon his overall ranking and his points per game as the season progresses. Not to mention that the Chargers still have to compete with the high-powered AFC West teams, which, we all expected the Broncos offense to be, something that people were going to have to keep up with. Turns out that that's not the case, but they do still have the Chiefs and the Raiders in that division that they're going to have to play against, and are probably going to have to score some points to win those games. They also have a few other potential shootouts left on the season against teams like Arizona and Miami. And the best part about their schedule is, if you're in a league that doesn't play in Week 18, which most leagues don't have a Week 18 championship, that's the week that the Chargers get Denver again. And Denver's a team that held Herbert to his lowest point total of the year. So you don't have to worry about facing the Broncos defense in the playoffs, which in that division, to not have to face that specific team or only have to face that team once in a season, in your fantasy season, is a win. So if you can get your hands on Justin Herbert, he's definitely worth going after. I think he's going to continue to just light it up as him and the rest of the team get a little bit more healthy. At the running back position, there's a couple guys I like moving forward this year. One is Travis Etienne. As you know, anybody who's watching football can see that Etienne has become more and more involved in the offense and has sort of taken over the RB1 role from James Robinson almost completely at this point. I think Robinson had one touch in that game yesterday. So Travis Etienne, a lot of explosive plays. Definitely a guy, if you can get your hands on, do so. I think he's going to be a little bit tough to trade for because of all the hype preseason, and he's finally living up to it. But a guy that you might be able to get your hands on who didn't have a lot of hype, who wasn't going very high in drafts, but has become the number one running back on his team is Raheem Mostert. You should definitely trade for both of them, but I'm going to talk about Mostert here. Since taking over the larger share of the backfield work in week 2, Mostert has only had one dud game, and that was week 3 versus the Bills. He scored at least 10 PPR points in every other game, again, besides week 3 and week 1. And he's outrushed Chase Edmonds 82-26 in the rush attempts column since week 2. And he's outscored him in fantasy points and PPR points 68-38. So Mostert is definitely the number one running back in Miami, and he should continue to be moving forward. The reason I chose to talk about Mostert here instead of ETN is because I think that you can still get him at a fairly reasonable price. He's producing as well as some of the big name guys like Zeke and Dalvin Cook, but he doesn't have the huge price tag attached to his name. So I think owners who have Raheem Mostert will be a little bit more likely to trade him to you if you can sort of give them maybe a bigger name player who maybe isn't living up to the hype, who maybe we'll get to in a little bit when we get to the tradeaways. A couple guys I like as far as wide receivers. DJ Moore, who had his first really good game this week against the Bucs. I think with that new regime change and a new quarterback and just a new feel in the locker room, mixed with the fact that DJ Moore is pretty much the only really good skill player left on the team, he could and should see an increase in targets and should basically be the team's number one option on every play now that McCaffrey's gone. Terry McLaurin is a guy that I'm looking to pick up. For whatever reason, Carson Wentz did not target Terry McLaurin nearly as much this year or as much as Taylor Heineke did last year. But now Carson Wentz is gone and Taylor Heineke is back in there. So we saw Terry McLaurin come up big in that game against the Packers this weekend. I think with Heineke back at quarterback, I think McLaurin becomes the number one wide receiver in this offense again. And if you can get a hold of him now before other owners realize what's going on, realize that he's, probably going to usurp Curtis Samuel moving forward, I think it's a good opportunity to go ahead and get your hands on a number one receiver. But the guy I really want to talk about and the guy I really think you should go out and trade for is Juju Smith-Schuster of the Kansas City Chiefs. If your league is anything like the ones that I play in, trading players for future draft picks is like the in thing to do at this point in the season. So if you're in a keeper league, if you're in a dynasty league or anything like that, one where you can get away with trading some draft picks, give up a couple for Juju Smith-Schuster. Unfortunately, I've had to sell off in some leagues and get some draft picks for some players. But if you're looking for a trade that you could pull off like straight up in like a normal redraft league, I think you can go after Juju Smith-Schuster. He finally looks like he's become the number one wide receiver in Kansas City. There's going to be some involvement from the other wide receivers on this team, as we saw obviously in week 7 with Mecole Hardman's 3 touchdowns. Smith-Schuster leads the wide receiver room in targets with 48, receptions with 34, and yards with 494. It seems as though he and Patrick Mahomes have finally started to figure each other out. And the fact that he has Kelsey there as the de facto number one kind of puts him in that same role that he flourished in when he was in Pittsburgh behind Antonio Brown. And I think that's where Juju Smith-Schuster's sweet spot is. I think when he has to be the number one target, I think it's too much pressure. I think he ends up, getting the other team's number one cornerback. And, I just don't think he's good enough to be successful in that specific role. But I think if he's there as an ancillary piece, he does well. I mean, that's if you look at it, the first 2 years of his career when he was in Pittsburgh, he was a monster. I mean, a lot of dynasty guys had him as their wide receiver 1 coming out of his second season. So I do think he's talented. I just think he needs the right situation, and I think he's starting to become comfortable in the situation that he's in there in Kansas City. And at tight end, some guys that you can pick up, Pat Freiermuth. He's just getting a lot more usage with Kenny Pickett there. You know, that's kind of a common thing. Generally, new quarterbacks, rookie quarterbacks tend to look at the tight end position because it's right in front of them. It's over the middle of the field. The throws are a little bit shorter, a little bit crisper. The target is a little bit bigger. So I think Pat Freiermuth moving forward is going to be one of Kenny Pickett's favorite targets. You could also pick up Dalton Schultz, assuming that he can get healthy from, this knee injury that seems to be bothering him. When Dak is quarterback for the Cowboys, Dalton Schultz gets targets. Dak Prescott trusts him. He looks for him. Schultz is never going to be the super athletic Travis Kelce type, but he's going to be a guy who gets targets as long as Dak Prescott is the quarterback. But the guy that I really want to talk about, and I know that we just talked about him in the injury segment, but I still think that he's a good trade candidate. And I think the fact that he's injured means that you could probably get him for even less now. You may even be able to pick him up off the waiver wire if somebody drops him, is David Njoku from the Cleveland Browns. Again, not a big name guy. So if you're in a redraft league, it's not like you're going to have to give up, a ton to get him. Again, if you even have to give up anything at this point, but his 42 targets is 6th at the tight end position, and he's 3rd in receiving yards amongst all tight ends with 418. The only thing Njoku hasn't been doing is scoring touchdowns, but once he gets back, Deshaun Watson should also be coming back. And anybody who remembers the Texans offense 2 years ago when Deshaun Watson was the quarterback there, he loved looking for the tight end in the red zone. So I think, again, if Watson comes back, I believe it's week 13. Yeah, week 13 against Houston, he'll be back. If Njoku is in the lineup at that point in time, I think, he's a great tight end that you can just put in your lineup, start every single week, and let him just sort of be your starting tight end through the playoffs. And I think you're definitely going to have one of the top tight ends in the playoffs, because the only guys that I'm sure that are going to be better than him are basically Andrews and Kelce. But other than that, I think he's got a chance to be the tight end 3 amongst that group for the last, 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season. All right, so that's my trade 4 segment. I'm going to turn it over to Scott here. He's going to have some, like I said, a little bit longer outlook. So some dynasty guys, some, if you're playing keeper leagues where you can hold on to these guys for, a couple years or what have you, Scott's going to give you some guys that you can look at picking up now and holding on to hopefully into the future.
All right, folks. So this isn't going to be anything like, again, a trade away concept. It's really just going to be acquiring some assets. I'm going to give you 3 names at the top positions in a sense that are younger players, rookies. One guy who's maybe not a rookie anymore, but that you might be able to get in a buy low concept or as a throw in, because that guy that's, maybe dominating their league that wants to really push forward and get to that point. Now, if you're a top dog in your league too, you got to look at it this way. If you're in a 10 to 12 team league, obviously dynasty, you want to get young fast and be good at the same time, which doesn't always happen. But maybe your first round pick could shake one of these guys loose from somebody else that's looking to regroup and just acquire picks. So you have to look at the play either way. That's kind of the art of the deal. It's who you're dealing with. Are they in contention? Are they out of contention? Do you have to give up picks to get these guys? Or do you have to give up a star player that's a win now guy that maybe has 2 or 3 good years left? Again, maybe a player like a Travis Kelce, who everybody wrote off and is right back to his old, stomping grounds. He legitimately probably only has a couple good seasons left, if that. He's a guy you could move to bring in, again, some of these younger players, albeit maybe even at the same position. And you're looking to retool because you already had that. Maybe the other owner throws in a second or first rounder with the deal. And that's the beauty of it, because sometimes you can be on the backside, but you might have some ability to make that move and get that owner to make that deal with you because they want to push all in for that season. You, unfortunately, maybe aren't. Let's get started. First, I'm going to start with the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, he is a rookie. He is right now in our current league of record, which is a redraft league. He's available. He's 35th in our league as far as points. Couple good things that have shown. Obviously, it hasn't been all great for them. He does have a win under his belt against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Quarterbacks take those losses as a quarterback. You know what? You take the win too. So you did beat Tom Brady, so you got that under your belt. He has one of the fastest pocket times in the league, getting that ball out at a rate right up there with Brady and all the best, Mahomes, all those guys. Some of that is translating to a 5% of his passes are becoming interceptions. So he's getting it out at a high rate. It's just more of that distribution and getting open guys. He is currently, albeit through 2.5 or so games, he is currently 4th in the NFL in completion percentage at 68.5. And again, those completions count towards his own team, not the interception. So he's showing some of the things that people thought that maybe he has the ability to do as a first-round pick and kind of getting thrown in there a little bit. Bailey Zappi from the New England Patriots. They're actually ready to play tonight. I believe they said Mac Jones is coming back in. But through 3 games, or 2.5, if you want to call it that, or we had a little bit of fill-in time when Mac Jones went down. 596 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's looked pretty good. And again, he was rated highly coming out of college from a smaller program, broke all kinds of records and everything like that. And obviously, with Bill Belichick in New England, you can fall out of favor and fall into favor really fast. That quarterback position for him is one that he knows both sides of the ball, the other team as well as his own. We've seen Tom Brady, obviously made a career. He Wally pipped Drew Bledsoe back in the day and never looked back, and obviously has, become what everybody considers the greatest football player of all time. Bailey Zappi, not saying that he's Tom Brady or that he's Mac Jones, but he has some of that ability that you see there. Mac Jones has been a little bit up and down this season. I think you could get Bailey Zappi if he's not already available, maybe on a waiver wire. But if he's somebody you got to trade for, you could probably get him fairly cheap. Again, that's another guy that you might want to make a move for that, in a year or two, depending if they fall out of favor with Mac Jones and he's just not getting it done, he could be somebody that becomes the starter right off the bat there because he's shown that he can play at a high level so far after a couple of games. And one guy who is another quarterback that I like is he's not in his rookie season, but I like to consider it his rookie season because last year was a little bit of a lost year for Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. In our league of record, which is a redraft league, he is owned. He is currently 9th overall. And a lot of people definitely in Dynasty have him out there as a starter. Some people aren't super high on him. They still feel like, he hasn't lived up to the hype and it's Jacksonville. That offense is really kind of in its infancy right now. Doug Peterson and the gang down there are really kind of bringing him along, trying to help him out as far as really getting stronger as a quarterback. Again, last year was a very tough year. He has been plagued. His wide receivers are 4th in the league in drops overall. So again, you got to hold on to the football. that kind of helps. He's 8th in yards. He's 9th in completions. So he is doing a lot of work. He's really running it out of the pro style right now. Not a lot of RPO, only 6 plays overall. And I mean, that being said, that offense, you're starting to see Travis Etienne, who I'm going to talk about in a second, starting to take over that backfield. So I think if you get that college connection and the wide receiving core starts to get a little less murky, Christian Kirk was a big signing, but we all know he's not a wide receiver 1. They might be a player away from being a legit offense in a year or two. Free agent signing, monster draft pick. We'll see what happens. At the same time, with that, I really feel like Trevor Lawrence, in a dynasty sense, in about 4 or 5 years, some of these veterans are going to shake out. He's going to probably be a top 5 quarterback in the league. And again, he's going to do it mostly on the passing ability, and he can scramble from time to time. He's not a Jalen Hurts. He's not a Lamar Jackson, but if need to, he can get out of the pocket. So I do like Trevor Lawrence. So again, if you're looking to pick up a quarterback in the concept of dynasty, in a concept of down the road, not a win now sense, try and go out and get Kenny Pickett, Bailey Zappi, or Trevor Lawrence. I think any one of those guys in a year or two, let alone possibly even by the end of the season for Trevor Lawrence, but in a year or two are really going to become solid household names when it comes to the quarterback. Moving on to running back. I've been high on him from the beginning of the year. I have him in all my leagues, and he's the one guy I will not part with. So anybody listening, you think you got a shot, you don't. Dameon Pierce, the Houston Texans. Currently in our league of record, he is 11th. Again, we run a redraft league. I have him in all my dynasty leagues. He's fifth in yards with 504. He ripped off a 75-yarder, 4.8 a carry. He's averaging 84 yards a game. And if you think he's a one-trick pony, he's not. He does break tackles right now. He's already has 16 broken tackles, which leads the league at the running back position. Pass catching, 17 catches on 19 attempts. So that's a 90% catch rate, averaging 4.8 yards reception too. And when you really went back and looked at his college numbers, he's just been that guy. He kind of reminds me a little bit of obviously a younger, but like a Frank Gore type running back. So he's going to be a guy that you're going to want on your roster. He's on a bad team. Some people might think, it's a little bit hype. Probably a lot of people have him. You're going to have, with the running back position, you're going to have to maybe give up a little bit to get that. But that's where instead of maybe using up a draft pick, if you don't have to, if you're trying to move off to acquire somebody like this as a cornerstone to your franchise, sliding off of that by moving an older veteran star that somebody wants in a win now sense, they might be willing to move Pierce. The problem being if he's already in that person's starting lineup, a little trickier with dynasty and all the starting slots with all the flex positions, might be a little tougher. So again, that might be a replacement that you really have to look at of moving off of, again, somebody. Maybe somebody's interested in Leonard Fournette for him. Again, you might have to move a pick to get him. But this is a guy I think that's going to go down, and be one of those guys for the next 10, 12 years as one of the most consistent running backs, an RB1 in every sense of the word. So I feel like if you can get Dameon Pierce, which might be a little tricky, the running back position is different, but I would definitely make the effort to go out and get him. Again, he could be packaged in a deal if somebody's really looking to move up and shore up their playoff run and things of that nature. If you're one of those owners that's out in front, again, you might have to dump some draft picks to pick up a player like this to just add into that effect of, again, having, a monster dominant backfield. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely think he's one of those guys. Another rookie running back. Again, I was higher on him than Breece Hall, and knock on wood, I do feel bad that Breece Hall has to go out with injury. He has been solid, and I am staying away from him because of that injury, because you don't know what's going to happen until he comes back, and that might take a year or two from really getting his footing back down. We've seen Saquon, we've seen McCaffrey with these injuries, and it's taken him a while to get back. So Breece Hall, right now, I'm kind of not big on because I really want to see what happens when he gets back. But Kenneth Walker, the third, 6.1 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns already. And that's in 2 starts, 6 games overall. He's already ripped off a 74-yarder, 4.8 yards a carry before contact. So anybody that thought that he doesn't have the burst or he's just a bigger guy, no, he can make some plays out of the backfield as well. I think Kenneth Walker, the third, obviously, he's going to be one of those guys that is just starting to come around. Right now is when you really want to almost try to pick him up. If you could shake him off of somebody, again, he's going to have to be somebody that's more of a bench piece on somebody's roster, not a true starter. This week had a monster game, and I think people are going to start to take notice and look to put him into that lineup. Maybe right now is where you have to make that move. Again, draft picks, a star player to try to shake him loose, strengthen somebody else at a spot, but see if you can pry him off of somebody's roster. Finally, again, Travis Etienne, Jacksonville Jaguars, did talk about that. James Robinson started the season as that guy, and you've just slowly seen the changeover offensively. I think that him and Lawrence obviously are starting to become, focal points, and I think with a good coaching staff, you're starting to see things shake out. Again, Etienne, same thing. He's averaging 6.1 yards a carry. He's averaging 4.3 yards before contact. So for the Liz Frank injury that maybe a lot of people were hesitant about, and then very high on him coming out of camp saying he was healthy, right now, it looks like he is going to be the guy. Again, in our league of record, he's 18th at the running back position and only going to get higher on that level. So again, running backs, you're going to look to pick up Dameon Pierce. You're going to look to pick up Kenneth Walker III. You're going to look to pick up Travis Etienne. And again, you're going to have to give to get. The running back position is the Cadillac of fantasy football. We know that. So I think some of these guys, you have to be willing to part ways with somebody really good or part ways with some draft picks. But in about 3-4 years, you're going to be having possibly one of the best backfields in your league. Moving on to wide receivers. A lot of people have this gentleman on their roster, albeit he may not be a starter yet because there's been a little bit of murkiness in certain ways with the New Orleans Saints. But Chris Olave, of the New Orleans Saints. Again, he is sixth in the league in average depth of target, 16.3. He's tied for 11th overall in receiving yards, and he's number 18 in our league of record coming into this week. Right now, again, some people may have him pegged in as a starter, possibly not. A lot of people probably drafted, again, even with some of the rookie running backs, but a lot of the rookies get drafted. Some people keep them on taxi squads. Some people just have them deeper on their roster and aren't comfortable starting a rookie yet, almost like a real NFL coach and a team. But I think Olave is possibly able to be bought off of somebody right now that, again, isn't starting him. And it's going to be tough. If somebody's using any of these players as a starter, you're going to have to cough up some serious coins, some draft picks, some star players to get these guys. But again, you want to get guys that are on the downswing of their career, and you almost want to be able to do that Indiana Jones move where he had the bag and he had the statue and he's just trying to figure out just enough to make that move, but you don't want that ball trying to roll and chase you down. I think Olave is really going to develop into one of the best wide receivers in the league within the next couple of years. He's shown a lot of promise. He was arguably the most complete wide receiver coming out of college. I know some people beg to differ. Drake London, right now, he's in a tough situation at Atlanta. Garrett Wilson, so far with the Jets, he's had some ups, he's had some downs, and we talked about the injuries with that team, and it's the Jets. It's tough. But again, with Chris Olave, I think you can't go wrong. He's a guy that could probably be, again, a cornerstone to your offense if you're able to pick him up. Another guy who's not a rookie, not even close, but right now there's a lot of change going on in the Carolina Panthers. This is a guy you might still be able to buy very low on and get him thrown in. And the reason I'm saying this is because DJ Moore is not the greatest wide receiver in the league, but is he very consistent? Yes. Obviously, this season taken a long time to come around. You had quarterback issues. The whole team, we've seen what's happened. That the team is imploded and is just looking to rebuild. And he's not going to be traded. They said he's part of that team. Every team says that. He has a contract that they can move off of. They can make trades without taking serious cap hits. So he could always move to a brighter future if he so wanted to get out. But, from 2019, 2020, and 2021, he was 15th, 21st, and 17th as wide receiver. He's consistent. He is a solid wide receiver, too. He is a money flex. On bye weeks, sometimes he can get you some serious stuff. He's going to give you that 15 to 20 points a game, pretty much on average. Again, and you're starting to see him finally get back to some targets. He had a nice game just yesterday against the Tampa Bay Bucks, where he finally was a little bit more involved. And it takes P.J. Walker to be the most competent quarterback on that roster. They said he's not going anywhere anytime soon. But again, we see Carolina looking to rebuild. They're going to bring in a quarterback. They're going to beef up the offensive line, just what every team does. Their defense isn't too bad. I think that if DJ Moore is going to be that guy, he's got a good 7-8 years left easily, that he's a guy that you definitely want to have on your roster. And I think you can get him pretty cheap right now because nobody who wants DJ Moore. Why? Yeah, he's that guy that you pick up right now to just become a piece of your team. And maybe down the road, he's somebody else that at the same time, by being that treble, by being that consistent player overall, that again, you could look to flip down the road maybe in a season or two to again, acquire an asset. He's the concept of that maybe veteran star that somebody just looks and says, man, if I had that guy, my team would take it over. So I think DJ Moore is a player that you can acquire probably on the cheap right now. And again, he's just going to give you some nice balance on your roster for years to come. And finally, wide receiver wise, Romeo Doubs, the Green Bay Packers. The team itself, not looking too good. Aaron Rodgers looks like he may be a little cooked and not used to getting there's no Devontae Adams to save him. Now he has to really lead the team. And Doubs has been the leader of that wide receiver core by a hair, but he is actually 4 for 4 on targeting inside the 15-yard line with 2 touchdowns. So it shows that they are willing to go to him right now in that spot. And he actually, Christian Watson has not been able to really play. So as far as the rookie wideouts, he's the only game in town. Leads the team in targets. And since week 3, he's been in for 92% of the snaps. I know a lot of people liked his college pedigree and felt like he was under the radar. I liked him a lot. I tried to get him in pretty much most of my leagues. I thought Green Bay would be a lot better this season. And again, he's a rookie. He has some drops and has some moments that kind of drive you a little nuts, maybe, I'm sure, as a fan or again as a fantasy football owner. But he is a gentleman that I feel like for years to come has the potential to be a top wide receiver in the league. Obviously, quarterback's going to change in that team in a year or 2, 3. Depends on what, Aaron Rodgers, he could be done by the end of this season. Who knows? That being said, if that does happen, they're not sending him anywhere anytime soon. Who knows? Who knows what Green Bay's going to do? Right now, they sit kind of middle of the pack. And, if they were to get a draft pick, again, we don't know what's going to happen. But I feel like Romeo Doubs is definitely going to be a player. In the future, he's going to be one of those guys that really gives you solid numbers. I think he's got 1,000-yard receiver potential. I think he's got that 60 to 80 receptions a season type of guy. Whether or not the touchdowns are there, we'll see. He can make some big plays. And again, he's just a rookie. So, he hasn't been doing it yet. These are developmental moves for your roster. This isn't a win now type of guy. This is a guy that if you can get him off of somebody on the cheap or as a throw in because of a move that you're making to make them better, or you're looking to you have a bunch of draft picks and you're looking to acquire somebody and make your roster a little bit younger. Finally, in the tight end position, we did see the Juwan Johnson breakout game. I'd like to say that I called that. But all kidding aside, right now he is kind of really coming into his own as the tight end. Everybody knows Taysom Hill in New Orleans is the tight end of record, but he plays so many different spots. He's at the QB. He's at the running back. They split him out wide. He's just that gadget guy on that team. Juwan Johnson last year had a nice blip on the radar and then disappeared. You're starting to see him end up, really as their starting tight end. He's tied for 8th with red zone targets. He is 14th in total snaps for tight ends. So you're starting to see this usage tick up, and you're seeing production happen. He had a nice game against Arizona, albeit a team that does give up some serious points to the tight end position. I think Juwan Johnson has some potential. He is a real big buy low guy. Nobody's going to worry about giving him up if he's not. Again, he could be on waiver wire depending on how big your leagues are. But Dynasty, somebody probably has him on their roster. He's a guy that you might want to just sit there and see what happens. Does he show the potential of being a top 10 tight end? He absolutely does. If the usage comes with it and it looks like it's starting to go up, he's speculative, but he's definitely a guy that you could probably get, again, as a throw-in in a deal, or as a guy that would definitely become, somebody down the road that could be a focal point to your offense. As a true tight end, probably, but definitely in leagues where you have flex positions at the tight end that you could throw in with bonus points. He's a guy that he could win your week. He could drop 25 or 30 points with a big game plus bonuses. So rookie Greg Dulcich out of UCLA took a while to get healthy and came right out. And as odd and up and down as that Denver offense has been, so far in 2 games, 8 catches on 11 targets, 95 yards, a touchdown. He's averaging 12 points in those 2 games. He was drafted to be that guy. And obviously Russell Wilson, the quarterback situation's murky there, but he's a guy right now that if you can get him now, I think you really need to go out and get, because he has the potential from what you're seeing in these couple of games. He's got the potential to possibly be a Kelsey, a Kittle, healthy, a Mark Andrews type of player with that kind of impact. And with the other players around him, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, if he doesn't get traded, you have some players on that roster that can help be complementary. If the quarterback play comes along with it, that's fine. But he's a player that's probably going to stay on that roster for years to come. He's being drafted to be that guy, whether or not the quarterback changes or not. So Greg Dulcich is another player you want to look to add to your roster for the tight end position. And again, he's somebody you'd probably be able to get a little bit cheaper. Last but not least, my guy, I'm dying on this hill all season. And again, I know down the road I'll get paid off on Dynasty for this. Jelani Woods hasn't had a ton of usage, but we know there's a lot going on in Indianapolis with the quarterback position. Right now, on the season, 6 catches on 10 targets, 77 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The guy's 6'7", 253 pounds. His measurables coming out of college just made people drool over him, but they knew he was a little bit raw. In the red zone, 3 catches, 3 targets, 3 touchdowns. You can see where this guy has the ability to be the guy if given the opportunity. And I feel like he's a player that, yes, is there going to be some touchdown dependency? Sure. But I think as he starts to get maybe a little more incorporated into the offense, and if they look to put him in a position to be that kind of a tight end, he definitely has that potential to me. I think there's no way you can ruin that athletic ability and not just, use him on that level. Again, he's still learning football at the tight end position. He had been a quarterback in high school. So we see some of these guys that move around that take a little bit of time and really come into their own. I think you can get them cheap. I don't expect that a lot of people are truly going to hang on to him the way maybe I would. At the same time, I think that Jelani Woods has that potential in a couple of years to really become, again, a top 10 tight end, maybe even of a Dawson Knox concept where he's a big target. He gets those first downs, those big catches down the field and the touchdowns, maybe not dependent on it like he is so far this season to be slightly relevant. But at the same time, I think he rounds out the concept of a tight end that you definitely would be able to pick up for a dynasty concept. And I think you should try to get him on your roster.
Yeah, those are all really great pickups. I actually like a lot of them for just this season as well. But yeah, definitely can see how these guys moving forward throughout their career could catapult to the next level and be superstars in this league. So I think you did a good job there, some sort of outlining some of these potential league winners that you can hopefully get now before they become league winners and not have to pay that premium for them. So real quick, I know we're short on time. We definitely went a little bit long in this, but I do want to give you a couple guys that you can trade away at each position just because, when you're making trades, you want to balance things out. You want to look at the other team's roster, see what they have, see what they need, and offer them something that's going to entice them. I mean, trades need to be two ways. You're never going to get a trade done if you're offering somebody, a wide receiver and they already have four, they're already making a decision who to bench each week because they have so many good wide receivers. So you got to take a look at their roster and see what they need as well. So here's a couple of guys that you can trade away at each position that, you might be able to get a deal done with some of these guys. At a quarterback position, I only have one. For me, it's Geno Smith. Smith's been the surprise of the year so far at quarterback position, but his time as a fantasy darling may be coming to an end. Smith just finished a 5-game stretch versus 5 bottom 12 defenses versus the QB position in fantasy football. He's only got 3 of those games left against bottom 12 teams, and only one of those games is in the fantasy playoffs. The Seahawks also run one of the slowest offenses in the league. They only average 58 plays per game, which is 4th worst in the league. And he's also been ultra efficient so far this year. 73.5% completion rate. That's number 1 in the league amongst players with at least 100 pass attempts. The all-time record for the NFL in a season is 74.4. So he's just 1%, not even a full percent behind Drew Brees' pace from 2018. Now, I'm not saying that his good play can't continue, but obviously you recently had that injury to DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett had been missing a little bit of time at practice with the hamstring. And you've got the emergence of rookie running back Kenneth Walker III, who, now that he's shown what he can do, I think Pete Carroll is likely going to move to a little bit more run-heavy offense. Not that Geno throws the ball a ton anyway, but I think if the volume doesn't increase, which I don't expect it to, and the efficiency goes down, which I think it will, given the defenses that he's going to face moving forward, I think this is a time where if you have Geno Smith and you can move him for something, I think this is the time to do it. And real quick, in the playoffs, he gets the 49ers in week 15, which would be the first week of your playoffs. The 49ers held him to just 7 fantasy points in week 2 when they faced him. And he also gets the Jets then in week 17, who have actually become one of the league's better fantasy defenses versus the quarterback position. They actually ranked 9th, giving up just 13.6 fantasy points per game. That's actually tied with San Francisco at that position. So Geno Smith's a guy, if you have him and you can get something for him, I would suggest doing it now. At the running back position, I have quite a few. The first 3 I'll lump together: Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Antonio Gibson, and Damien Harris. If you have any of these guys on your roster, I believe that you should trade them now. They are all in committees. They're all, aside from CEH, he's I don't want to say he's like the main guy, but he gets the majority of the carries, but he's in more of a 3-way split. Same with Gibson. He's got to contend with J.D. McKissick and now Brian Robinson. And then Damien Harris, just coming back off an injury potentially tonight. He's going to eventually give way to Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson's just more talented, and I think Harris is eventually going to sort of fade into, just being a guy who gets maybe 8 or 9 carries a game and takes a backseat to Stevenson. But the guy that I really think you should trade away if you have him is Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Harris, him, Kyle Pitts, probably the biggest non-injury disappointments in all of fantasy football this year. I know, Scott, you had him as your number 1 overall running back this season, but
yeah, we're not talking about that.
But the combination of a bad offensive line, shabby quarterback play so far, and a downtick in the number of snaps, carries, and targets that he's getting in this offense have all helped to keep Najee Harris down at the running back 21 in PPR scoring. His 100 rush attempts ranks 10th in the league, but out of all the running backs in the league with at least 50 carries, his 3.3 yards per attempt is behind only Cam Akers in the yards per carry. So he's just not being efficient with his touches. He's also way down in the target share this year without Ben, the check down King Roethlisberger under center. He's only got he's only got 22 targets so far in 7 games. That's a 53 target pace for the entire season. Remember last year he finished with 90 something targets and some 70 some catches, something like that.
But the tale of 2 running backs, man.
Yeah. And to put that number in perspective, that 53 target pace, Austin Eckler in 7 weeks already has 53 receptions on the season. And Harris is on pace for just 53 targets for the entire year. So, I'm not really sure what you could get for him at this point, but if there's a wide receiver heavy team out there that is hurting for a running back, maybe you can turn Najee Harris into a guy like, Alan Lazard or maybe even Devontae Smith. I think that a team who is flexing one of those guys might be willing to give you one of those players for Najee Harris just based off of what Najee did last year and sort of the name value of him. At the wide receiver position, a couple guys I'm not interested in holding on to. Michael Pittman. With him, it's mostly the quarterback change, and Scott, you and I talked about the poorly run organization there in Indianapolis. Moving forward, I don't really know what you're going to get out of Indianapolis. I maybe would hold on to Pittman for maybe a week or two, see how Sam Ehlinger works out, and if he hyper targets Pittman because he's a number 1 in that offense, maybe then you hold on to him. But definitely, if you see a downtick in targets, and listen, the offense is more than likely going to be worse. I can't see it getting better moving forward. So if you're willing and ready to sell now on Pittman, you can still get a haul at this point for him, I believe. And I think you should go ahead and do that. Another wide receiver, again, you might not be able to get much for him, but Adam Thielen just is not what he has been in previous years. He's only found the end zone twice this year, and that kind of has been his calling card to fantasy production, has been touchdowns. They're just not looking for him in the red zone as much as they have been in the past. And again, I don't know what you can get for him, but I would trade him for pretty much anything I could get at this point because I just don't think that he's even a flex-worthy option moving forward. Maybe on some of the really heavy bye weeks, but other than that, I can't see a time where I'd want to put him in my lineup. But the guy that I do think you could get something for that you should trade is Brandon Cooks. Cooks has been Mr. Reliable pretty much for as long as I can remember playing fantasy football, or at least as long as he's been in the league. He's finished inside the top 20 at the wide receiver position 6 of his 8 years in the league. This year, however, he looks, a little bit more mortal. He's currently the wide receiver 48 in PPR on the season. He's on pace for his worst fantasy finish since 2019. That was the year that he was traded from the LA Rams to the Houston Texans. That year, he had only 72 targets at the end of that season. Right now, he's currently on pace for 79 receptions for 796 yards and 3 touchdowns. That would place him outside of the top 30 for wide receivers last year. Again, this year is obviously a different ball game, but based on those numbers, he would be outside of that top 30. The problem, I think, with Cooks this year is that the Texans' defense is improved from last year, allowing the Texans to not have to be in so many obvious passing situations and allowing them to run the ball with that outstanding rookie Dameon Pierce that you brought up earlier a little bit more often. They've only thrown the ball 207 times this year. That's the ninth lowest in the league. And they're also making a concerted effort to get the ball to their younger players. Nico Collins has 30 targets so far on the year, only 17 behind Cooks. Last year, at the end of the season, Cooks had more than doubled Collins in targets, who was second on the team, 134 to 61. So, this year looking like a much closer split. And you even seen other guys like Chris Moore get involved and, the tight ends and things like that. So Cooks is not being hyper-targeted the way that he was in his previous season. So he may still have enough name value, though, to get you a younger player that could make a difference for you in the playoffs, especially one of these guys like you were talking about, a guy like Romeo Doubs or maybe even like a Michael Gallup who hasn't done anything yet. I would much rather have either of those guys on my team than Brandon Cooks moving forward. At the tight end position, there's two guys that I'm looking to get rid of. Mike Gesicki, he's just not involved in the offense enough. I think when I checked earlier, I didn't write this down. I don't know why I didn't, but I want to say he had somewhere in the neighborhood of like 24, 22 targets on the year so far. Just not really being involved as much as, at least in the passing game. He's still getting, a ton of snaps. A really athletic guy, but just not a part of their passing offense the way that they're going right now. But the guy that I really think you should trade now is Tyler Higbee. Higbee has been a lifesaver so far, literally keeping one of my teams afloat in the league that I drafted, Kyle Pitts. But despite having 50 targets, which is third in the league, Higbee is only the tight end 10 in fantasy points per game. And the Rams offense has struggled this year, to say the least. And part of the reason is their low efficiency in the passing and the running game. They're averaging only 6.3 yards per passing attempt in 2022. That's over a full yard less than they were last year when they were at 7.4. And they're also averaging only 3.4 yards per rush, which is 31st in the NFL right now. I think in order for the Rams to turn things around, they need to be a little bit more explosive on offense. And I think Tyler Higbee is not the guy that, screams explosive-ness. He's more of a reliable underneath target, which is why he's been getting so many targets, because their wide receivers have been struggling to get open. They are going to get Van Jefferson back soon, maybe as soon as this week. So he's a great stash if you want to grab him and put him on your bench now. And they should hopefully be able to get Allen Robinson more involved in the offense. I know he's looked really bad so far this season, but as time progresses, Stafford hopefully gets a little bit more comfortable with him. Sean McVay realizing that he's going to need to be a little bit more, have a little bit more of a downfield threat in this offense in order to play better, football and win games. This trade away isn't really based on stats as much as it is on my belief that McVay will eventually figure it out, and it won't include Tyler Higbee nearly as much as it has so far this year. So Higbee's a guy, if you can get something for him now, I think you're going to see his targets come down as the Rams come off of their bye this week and start to, I think, open things up a little bit more in that offense. So those are the tradeaways, or some guys that I think you can still get value for that, probably are not going to have as good of an end of the season as they have so far at the beginning. And, again, if you can grab some of those guys that I talked about earlier who do look like they're sort of coming into their own as the season wears on, this is the time where good fantasy owners flip those players, because for the most part, there's not a ton of guys out there, at least not tradable assets, guys like Cooper Kupp, guys like, Justin Jefferson, running backs like Christian McCaffrey. Like, people don't generally trade those players away, without getting, a massive haul back. But some of these trades you can make, the ones that I gave you today, are some guys that I think are a little bit sneakier and a little bit more doable without having to completely wreck your roster to get some of those players for your playoff run. So hopefully, you take that, for what it's worth and move forward and make some of these trades and go out and make some offers. But those are the guys I think have a positive outlook for the rest of the season versus some of the guys who I believe have a negative outlook. So we did run a little long tonight. So that is probably going to do it for us for this episode. Scott, do you have anything you want to throw out there before we head out?
Go Phils. We're going to win a World Series, by the way. But no.
I'm surprised it took us this long for you to get the Phils shout out in there, honestly.
I didn't want to lead with it, as much. But Definitely. No, definitely on that. I'm just kind of joking around, but yeah, no, we're big Phils fans, and we're shooting for that. Obviously, it's fantasy football, but yeah, we're going to take down the dreaded Houston Astros and bring another World Series.
The evil
too.
empire.
Yeah, well, they're cheaters. That's the whole thing. They deserve it. So,
well, they say if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So
that's NASCAR. That's. But no, again, I think, we touched on a lot of stuff. Again, win now guys to trade away for guys to look at as long-term players that, again, could probably be acquired now before they become superstars. There are definitely, things on the table for everybody here. So again, I know, like you said, Pat, we did run a little bit long tonight. So as far as finishing out, folks, you can always reach us on our website, which is www.the9routeffb.com. Our email address is the9routeffb@gmail.com. You can look us up at the 9route on Twitter and at Scott from Delco, also on Twitter. Again, if you're interested in any type of question, comments, concerns regarding fantasy football, we will definitely answer those. Just don't get too personal. On that level, all kidding aside, we definitely love to hear from you, and just know that you're listening, with some questions or, again, if you have a counterpoint to anything that we talk about, please feel free. We'd like to thank our friends at Mickey's Protocol Pub. Everybody that is in the Tuckerton area, they tend to gravitate to that spot, 327 East Main Street in Tuckerton, New Jersey. Swing on down. Again, for instance, tonight, kids eat free on Monday nights, and happy hour is always 3 to 6. Tomorrow night is Taco Tuesday. So again, they offer plenty of stuff for you and the family. Swing down there, watch the Phils win the World Series, watch some NFL games. Tonight you got Monday night, you got Chicago, New England. Depending on if you're a fan of one of those teams, you might need a drink, period. So by all means, swing by Mickey's and support them. They're a friend of the show, and we love the guys down there. And that being said, I think that is kind of it, folks, for Pat. I am Scott. We'll talk to you soon with Start Sits. Hopefully we gave you some knowledge to take you a little deeper in your fantasy league for this season and seasons to come. And that's it, folks. Peace.